The crash. On a distant planet named Valoria, the sun was setting, casting a golden light over the rocky hills and strange, colorful plants. The air was thick with the smell of strange flowers, and the sound of rustling leaves filled the atmosphere. It was a beautiful yet dangerous world. Little did the inhabitants know that their peace was about to be shattered. In the sky above Valoria, a small spaceship was spiraling out of control. Inside, a human pilot named Alex gripped the controls tightly. He had always dreamed of exploring new worlds, but now that dream was turning into a nightmare. Alarms blared, warning him of the ship's failing systems. "Come on, stay with me," he shouted, his voice barely above the noise. He had to land the ship before it was too late. With every ounce of strength, he fought against the controls, trying to stabilize the craft. But it was no use. The ship was going down. With a sudden crash, the ship slammed into the rocky ground, sending up clouds of dust and debris. The impact knocked Alex unconscious for a moment. When he finally opened his eyes, he was dazed and confused. The ship was damaged, and smoke poured from the engines. "Is everyone okay?" he murmured, but the silence around him confirmed he was alone. He quickly unbuckled himself and stumbled out of his seat. As he climbed out of the wreckage, the strange landscape greeted him. The sun was low on the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, but he had no time to admire the view. He needed to find help. As he surveyed his surroundings, he noticed tall purple plants swaying in the gentle breeze. Suddenly, he heard a rustling sound nearby. Alex's heart raced. He looked around, scanning for any signs of life. His training had taught him to be cautious, especially on unknown planets. He picked up a small rock, ready to defend himself if necessary. "Hello," he called out, his voice echoing in the quiet. "Is anyone there?" Just then, a figure emerged from behind a rock. It was unlike anything he had ever seen. The creature was tall and slender, with shimmering blue skin and large expressive eyes. Alex stepped back, unsure if this being was friend or foe. "Please, I mean no harm," he said, raising his hands in a gesture of peace. "I crashed here. Can you help me?" The alien stared at him, fear and curiosity evident in its eyes. It seemed to understand his words, but did not respond. Instead, it turned and ran, glancing back as if inviting him to follow. Without thinking, Alex took off after it. He was desperate for answers and safety. They ran through the thick underbrush, the alien moving quickly and gracefully, while Alex struggled to keep up. "Wait, please slow down," he shouted, but the alien didn't stop. Finally, they reached a hidden cave. The alien ducked inside, and Alex hesitated before following. Inside the cave, the air was cool and damp. The alien stood in the shadows, trembling. Alex could see now that it was injured, a deep gash on its arm. "You're hurt," he exclaimed, rushing forward. The alien winced, but did not pull away. "Let me help you," he said, his voice gentle. He reached into his bag for a first aid kit, feeling a strange connection to this creature. Maybe he had crashed on Valoria for a reason. As he cleaned the alien's wound, Alex realized that their lives were now intertwined. In this moment of danger and uncertainty, they were both lost but hopeful, finding comfort in each other's presence. The safe place. The cool air of the cave wrapped around Alex like a soft blanket. He felt relieved to be out of sight from the outside world. The alien sat quietly, its big eyes watching him with a mix of fear and curiosity. Alex could see that the injury was worse than he first thought. He had to act quickly. "Just hold still for a moment," he said softly, trying to keep his voice calm. He opened his first aid kit, pulling out a bandage and some antiseptic. The alien flinched as Alex cleaned the wound, but he spoke to it gently. "You're going to be okay, I promise." As he worked, Alex stole glances at the alien. He could see the fear slowly fading from its face, replaced by something softer. "What's your name?" he asked, wanting to know more about this creature who was now in his care. The alien hesitated, then said in a voice that was both melodic and strange, "Kale." "Kale," Alex repeated, smiling. "That's a nice name." He finished wrapping the bandage around Cal's arm and sat back, feeling a sense of relief wash over him. "I'm Alex. It's good to meet you." Kale studied Alex with curiosity. "You are human," it said slowly, as if tasting the words. "Why are you here?" Alex took a deep breath, knowing he had to explain his situation. "I was flying my spaceship and crashed here by accident. I didn't mean to land on your planet." Kale looked thoughtful. "Your kind does not usually come here," it replied. "Most humans do not care for our world." "I know," Alex said, feeling the weight of Cal's words. "But I'm different. I want to help, not hurt." Kale nodded slowly, and for the first time, a small smile crept onto its face. "Help. That is a good thing." The two sat in silence for a moment, the cave filled with the sound of dripping water and distant echoes. Alex's mind raced with thoughts of his crash and the soldiers who might still be searching for Cal. "We can't stay here for long," he said finally. "We need to find a way to get out of danger." Cal's expression turned serious. "The soldiers will come for me. They want my power." "Power?" Alex asked, confused. "What do you mean?" "I am a prince," Cal explained. "Without me, my people will have no hope against the evil ruler. They will kill me to control the kingdom." Alex felt a rush of determination. "Then we have to get you to safety. I can help you." He stood up, feeling the new sense of purpose. "If we work together, we can figure this out." Cal looked at him with surprise. "You would risk your life for me?" "Of course," Alex replied, his heart racing. "We need a plan. First, let's figure out where we can go that's safe. I know a bit about survival from my training. Together, we can make it." Cal nodded, feeling hope blooming in its chest. "I know a place, a hidden valley where my people can gather. It is far from here." "Great," Alex said, feeling a spark of excitement. "Lead the way, but we need to be careful. If the soldiers find us, we might not make it." With a new goal in mind, Cal stood up, its body now a bit steadier. The two of them ventured deeper into the cave, looking for a hidden exit. They moved carefully, aware of the danger outside. The bond between them was growing stronger, formed from fear, hope, and the promise of friendship. As they reached a narrow path that led out of the cave, Cal paused. "Thank you, Alex. I did not expect to find a friend in you." "Me too, Cal," Alex said, smiling. "Let's get you home." With that, they stepped into the unknown, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, united in their mission, the hunt. As Alex and Cal stepped out of the cave, the bright sun greeted them, casting long shadows on the rocky ground. The air was warm, but a sense of danger loomed over them. Alex felt his heart race as he glanced around, knowing they had to move quickly. The soldiers would not be far behind. "Where do we go from here?" Alex asked, looking at Cal. The alien prince seemed focused, its eyes scanning the horizon. "There is a forest nearby," Cal replied, pointing to a cluster of tall, dark trees in the distance. "We can hide there, but we must be careful. The soldiers are good at tracking." "Let's go then," Alex urged, feeling a mix of fear and determination. They took off at a brisk pace, moving cautiously to avoid making noise. Each rustle of leaves made them jump, and Alex wished he had some kind of weapon to defend them both. As they ran, Cal glanced back, worry etched on its face. "What if they catch us?" Alex tried to sound confident. "We won't let that happen. Just stay close to me." He pushed himself to run faster, his eyes focused on the trees ahead. When they finally reached the edge of the forest, they paused to catch their breath. The trees were tall and thick, their leaves creating a cool shade. "We should rest for a moment," Cal suggested, its voice shaky. Good idea, Alex said, feeling a surge of relief. They found a large tree with a wide trunk and leaned against it, hoping to hide their presence. After a few minutes of silence, Cale spoke softly. Alex, can you tell me more about your world? Alex was surprised. You want to know about Earth? Yes, I want to understand you, Cale replied, its eyes bright with curiosity. Okay, well, it's very different from here. We have cities, tall buildings, and lots of people. We travel by cars and planes. Alex began. He could see Cale listening intently, and he felt a warm connection growing between them. Suddenly, a loud noise broke their conversation. They both turned sharply toward the sound. It was coming from the direction they had just run from. The unmistakable sound of heavy boots crunching on the ground echoed through the trees. They're here, Cale whispered, panic rising in its voice. Alex's heart raced as he pulled Cale behind the tree, urging it to stay quiet. They pressed their backs against the trunk, listening closely. The voices of the soldiers were growing louder, and Alex could feel the tension in the air. Spread out. We can't let them escape, a deep voice commanded. Cale looked up at Alex, fear in its eyes. What do we do now? Alex thought quickly. We need to stay low and be silent. If we can hear them, they can't see us. He took a deep breath to calm himself. If they come too close, we'll find a way to sneak away. The soldiers' voices drifted closer, and Alex could see shadows moving between the trees. He held his breath, praying they wouldn't find them. The minutes felt like hours as they waited, frozen in place. Finally, the soldiers moved past them, continuing their search deeper into the forest. Alex felt a wave of relief wash over him, but they couldn't stay hidden for long. We need to move now, he whispered urgently. Where? Cale asked, glancing in the direction the soldiers had gone. There's a river a little farther in, Alex replied. If we can reach it, we might find a way to cross and throw them off our trail. Cale nodded, determination replacing the fear in its eyes. Together, they slipped away from the tree and made their way deeper into the forest, hearts pounding. Every sound made them jump, but they kept moving, determined to escape the hunt that was now after them. With each step, Alex felt a growing sense of urgency. He was not just fighting for his own life anymore. He was fighting for Cale and the hope of a better future for its people. The bond between them had deepened in that moment of fear, and he knew they would do anything to protect each other. The secret. As Alex and Cale moved deeper into the forest, the sound of rushing water grew louder. The air was filled with the fresh smell of damp earth and leaves. Alex led the way, his heart racing not just from the fear of being caught, but also from the questions swirling in his mind. He needed to know more about Cale and its world. After a short while, they reached the river. Its water sparkled in the sunlight, flowing quickly over smooth stones. This is it, Alex said, feeling relieved. We can hide here for a bit. Cale nodded, but there was a look of worry on its face. The soldiers will look for us by the river. They know we might try to cross. Alex scanned their surroundings. We'll find a place to hide. But first, I need to understand your situation better. He looked at Cale, trying to gauge its reaction. What does it mean to be a prince? Why are they after you? Cale sat down on a rock, its blue skin shimmering in the sunlight. In my kingdom, I am the last heir of the royal family. My father was a good king, but he was killed by the current ruler, General Theros. He is cruel and wants to control everything. Alex listened closely, feeling a mix of sadness and anger. I'm sorry, Cale. That sounds terrible. Cale continued, its voice steady. Before my father died, he told me to run if anything ever happened. He knew Theros would come for me. I have a duty to my people, but I'm scared. Scared of what? Alex asked gently, wanting to help. Scared that I won't be able to save them, Cale admitted, looking down at the water. Without me, they have no hope. Theros will crush any rebellion. Alex felt a deep sense of determination rise within him. "You're not alone, Cale. I'm here to help you. We can fight against him together." Cale looked up, its eyes wide with surprise. "You would risk your life for me, for my people?" "Yes," Alex replied firmly. "I didn't ask to be part of this fight, but now that I am, I'll do everything I can to help." Cal's expression softened, and a small smile broke through its worried look. "Thank you, Alex. You have shown me kindness in a world filled with danger." Just then, a loud crack echoed through the trees. Both of them turned sharply, fear creeping back into their hearts. "What was that?" Alex whispered, instinctively moving closer to Cale. "It could be the soldiers," Cale said, eyes wide with fear. "We need to move." Without wasting a moment, they slipped into the trees again, searching for a place to hide. The dense foliage provided some cover, but they needed to stay quiet. The river flowed beside them, its sound masking their footsteps. As they crouched behind a large bush, Alex took a deep breath. "If we're going to fight back, we need a plan. Do you know where the rebels are? Can we find them?" Cale thought for a moment, its brow furrowing. "Yes, there is a hidden camp in the hills, but it's a dangerous journey. Theros soldiers patrol those areas often. Then we'll have to be careful." Alex replied, feeling the surge of determination. "We can't let fear stop us. If you lead the way, I'll follow. We'll get to the rebels and form a plan to take down Theros together." Cale nodded, its expression turning serious. "You are brave, Alex. More than many of my own people." They shared a moment of understanding. In this vast and strange world, they had found a bond that went beyond their differences. Together, they could face the challenges ahead. With that, Cale took the lead again, and they started to move cautiously toward the hills, each step echoing their shared resolve. The hunt was still on, but they were not just fleeing anymore. They were preparing to fight for a better future. As they pressed on, Alex felt a fire in his heart. He would not let Cale down, no matter the cost. The escape. The sun began to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across the landscape as Alex and Cale made their way toward the hills. The forest had become quieter, but the tension in the air was thick. They knew that danger was still close behind them. The sounds of the river faded as they entered a denser part of the woods. "We have to move quickly," Cale urged, glancing over its shoulder. "If the soldiers find us here, we won't stand a chance." Alex nodded, his heart racing. "Let's stick to the shadows. We can't let them see us." They moved cautiously, careful to avoid any branches or leaves that might give away their position. Every snap of a twig made them jump. They'd followed a narrow path that twisted through the trees, their eyes scanning for any sign of danger. After walking for what felt like hours, they reached a clearing at the base of the hills. The sun was nearly gone, leaving only a hint of light behind. Alex turned to Cale, his mind racing. "This might be a good spot to rest for a moment." Cale nodded but looked worried. "What if they catch us? We can't stay here too long." "We'll keep watch," Alex assured. "Just for a few minutes. We need to catch our breath." They found a small rock formation to hide behind and sat down, breathing heavily. The cool evening air felt refreshing against their skin, but the reality of their situation weighed heavily on them. Suddenly, they heard voices in the distance. The soldiers were close. Alex felt his heart drop. "Cale, we have to move. Now." Cale's eyes widened in fear, and they both scrambled to their feet. They sprinted away from the clearing, pushing through the thick underbrush. The sound of footsteps grew louder behind them, echoing in the darkness. "Where do we go?" Cale shouted, panic rising in its voice. "We need to find a way to the hills." Alex replied, pointing to the rocky terrain ahead. "If we can climb, we might lose them." As they ran, they reached the foot of the hills. The ground was uneven, with loose rocks and sharp edges. "Be careful," Alex warned, trying to keep his footing. They began to climb, using every bit of strength they had left. The voices of the soldiers echoed behind them, growing closer. They went this way. Don't let them escape. Cale stumbled, nearly falling back down the hill. I can't keep up. Alex grabbed Cale's arm, helping it regain balance. Just a little further. We're almost there. He could feel the urgency of the moment pushing him forward. Finally, they reached a narrow ledge that jutted out from the side of the hill. They crouched behind it, breathing heavily. The voices of the soldiers grew faint, but they knew they couldn't stay still for long. Alex, what do we do now? Cale asked, its voice trembling. We need to find a way to signal the rebels, Alex said, looking around. If they see us, they can help us, but we have to make sure the soldiers don't find us first. Cale nodded, understanding the importance of their next move. There's a cave higher up that the rebels use for hiding. If we can get there, we might be safe. Then let's go, Alex said, feeling a rush of hope. They started to climb again, moving carefully and quietly. As they reached the entrance of the cave, they paused to listen. The soldiers' voices were still distant, but the threat was not gone. Alex quickly looked inside, checking for any signs of danger. It looks clear, he whispered, beckoning Cale to follow. They slipped into the cave, the cool air surrounding them like a protective shield. Inside, the darkness felt comforting, and they could finally catch their breath. Alex leaned against the wall, heart pounding. We made it, he said, a smile breaking through the tension. Cale turned to him, relief washing over its face. Yes, but we must be ready. The fight is not over. Together, they sat in the dark, feeling stronger and more united than ever. They were not just survivors, they were allies ready to face the challenges ahead. The plan. Inside the cave, the cool darkness wrapped around Alex and Cale like a protective blanket. They sat in silence for a moment, catching their breath. The air was still, and the distant sounds of the forest made it feel safe, but they both knew the danger was not far behind. Now that we're here, we need to come up with a plan, Alex said, breaking the silence. He leaned against the cave wall, trying to gather his thoughts. We can't just wait for the soldiers to find us. We need to take action. Cale nodded, its blue skin glowing slightly in the dim light. Yes, but what can we do? Theros soldiers are strong, and they are many. Alex thought for a moment. But we have something they don't. The element of surprise. If we can find the rebels and convince them to join us, we might have a chance. Cale's eyes brightened. I know where the rebels gather. They often meet near the old ruins to the east. It is a safe place for them to discuss plans. Then that's our target, Alex said, feeling the surge of determination. We can sneak out of here at dawn, when it's still dark. We'll avoid the main paths and stick to the woods. Cale looked thoughtful. But how will we convince the rebels to fight with us? They might not trust a human. Alex smiled. I might have an idea. If you tell them about your father and the threat of Theros, they will see the truth. Your people know your story. You're their prince. They will believe you. Cale took a deep breath, confidence returning to its voice. You are right. I must show them that I am ready to lead. Together, we can rally them to our cause. Exactly, Alex said, feeling encouraged. We can gather all the rebels and create a plan to take down Theros. We need to find out his weaknesses. What do you think his weaknesses are? Cale asked, curious. Well, Alex began. From what you've told me, it sounds like he rules through fear. If we can unite the people and show them that they don't have to be afraid, we can weaken his power. We just need to be smart about it. Cale's eyes sparkled with hope. And if we can cut off his supply lines or ambush his soldiers, we might create chaos in his ranks. That could give us an advantage. Yes, we can start small, Alex suggested. A few surprise attacks to show the rebels that Theros can be defeated. Once they see that, more people will join us. Cale nodded, its determination growing. But we must be careful. If we fail, Theros will make an example of us. Alex felt a rush of excitement and fear at the same time. Then we have to make sure we don't fail. We need to gather information about Theros' movements and his forces. We can't just rush in without knowing what we're up against. Kale stood up, its posture strong and confident. You are right, Alex. We will be wise and brave. Together, we can reclaim my kingdom. As they discussed their plan, Alex could feel the bond between them deepening. They were no longer just a human and an alien. They were partners in a fight for justice. The future of Cal's people depended on them, and they were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Let's get some rest before we leave at dawn, Alex said, yawning. We'll need our strength for tomorrow. Kale agreed, settling down on the cave floor. Thank you for believing in me, Alex. I feel stronger knowing you are by my side. Always, Alex replied, closing his eyes. With hope in their hearts and a plan in mind, they drifted into a restless sleep, ready to fight for a better future. The betrayal. The first light of dawn crept into the cave, casting soft shadows on the walls. Alex stirred awake, feeling the weight of the mission ahead. He turned to Kel, who was still sleeping, its face peaceful and calm. Alex smiled, knowing that they had a plan. But that smile quickly faded as he remembered the dangers waiting for them outside. Kel, he whispered, nudging the alien gently. Wake up. It's time to go. Kale blinked and stretched, its eyes slowly adjusting to the morning light. Are you ready? It asked, its voice still sleepy but filled with determination. More than ever, Alex replied. Let's move. They quietly left the cave, stepping into the cool morning air. The world outside was calm, and for a moment, they felt safe. The forest was alive with sounds. Birds chirping, leaves rustling in the gentle breeze, but they knew they couldn't let their guard down. Stay close, Alex said as they navigated through the trees, avoiding open areas where soldiers might be patrolling. They moved quickly and silently, guided by Cal's knowledge of the terrain. After what felt like hours of cautious travel, they reached a high vantage point overlooking the old ruins. The sun was now shining brightly, and they could see the rebels gathering below. Alex's heart raced with excitement. This was their chance. Look, there they are, Kale pointed, its eyes wide with hope. We can go down now. As they approached the ruins, they noticed a small group of rebels standing together, whispering among themselves. Alex felt a mix of nerves and determination. He turned to Kale. You lead the way. Tell them who you are. Kale took a deep breath and stepped forward. I am Kale, son of King Eldrin. I have returned to unite you against Theros. The rebels looked shocked at first, whispering among themselves. One of them, a tall woman with fiery red hair, stepped forward. You were thought to be dead. How do we know this is not a trick? Kale raised its voice, filled with confidence. I escaped from Theros' soldiers. I have a plan to take back our kingdom, but I cannot do it alone. We need your help. The rebels exchanged glances, some showing signs of doubt, while others seemed inspired. Just as it looked like they might believe Kale, a loud voice rang out from the edge of the group. Wait, this is a trap. A man named Darek stepped forward, his eyes filled with suspicion. How do we know you aren't leading us to Theros? What do you mean? Kale asked, confusion filling its voice. I am here to help you. Darek stepped closer, pointing an accusing finger. I have seen the soldiers patrol these woods. You could be working with them. We cannot trust you. Alex felt anger rise within him. That's not true. Kale is risking its life to save all of you. We need to fight together. The rebels murmured, divided in their opinions. Kale's face fell, hurt by the betrayal from one of its own people. I have no intention of betraying anyone. My only goal is to free us from Theros' rule. Just then, the tension in the air shifted. Alex felt a shiver run down his spine. He turned, and in the distance, he spotted movement through the trees. A group of soldiers was approaching, weapons ready. "Run," Alex shouted, panic rising in his voice. "They're here." The rebels scrambled, but Derek stood firm, shaking his head. "You're lying. This is a trick to bring us to our doom." Before anyone could react, the soldiers burst into the clearing. "There they are," a soldier shouted, pointing at Cale and Alex. Chaos erupted. The rebels fled in all directions, but Derek stood his ground, still trying to convince others that Cale was a traitor. Alex grabbed Cal's arm. "We have to go. Now." As they turned to run, Derek yelled after them, "You will regret this, Cale. You are no prince to me." With those words echoing in their ears, Alex and Cale raced into the woods, hearts pounding with fear and betrayal. They had not only escaped the soldiers, but they had also lost the trust of their own people. The road ahead was more dangerous than ever, and they had to find a way to reclaim that trust if they wanted to succeed in their fight against Theros. The final fight. The sun hung low in the sky as Alex and Cale made their way back through the thick trees. They had narrowly escaped the soldiers, but the feeling of betrayal by the rebels weighed heavily on them. Each step felt heavier, and doubt began to creep into their minds. "We can't give up," Alex said, breaking the tense silence. "We need to find the rebels and convince them to join us again. If they see what we can do together, they will trust you." Cale looked troubled, but Derek was right. "They might see me as a traitor. They saw me leave with you, a human. How can I gain their trust back?" "By showing them you are a true leader," Alex replied firmly. "Let's head to the old ruins. If we can set up a plan, we can make them see that Theros is the real enemy." Cale nodded, determination shining in its eyes once more. "Let's go. We need to gather whatever support we can before it's too late." As they approached the ruins, the sounds of battle reached their ears. Shouting and clashing weapons filled the air. Cale's heart raced. "It's starting. Theros must be attacking the rebels." They hurried toward the commotion, adrenaline pushing them forward. As they reached the outskirts of the ruins, they saw the scene unfolding before them. Rebels fought bravely against Theros soldiers, but they were outnumbered and outmatched. "Look," Cale shouted, pointing at a group of rebels fighting fiercely against the soldiers. "We have to help them." Alex nodded. "Let's find a way to flank them. If we can catch the soldiers by surprise, we might turn the tide." They quickly moved around the edges of the fight, searching for a spot where they could help without being seen. Cale felt fear and excitement surge through it. This was the moment it had been waiting for, its chance to prove itself. Suddenly, a loud roar echoed through the air. Alex turned to see a soldier pushing a rebel to the ground, preparing to strike. "No!" he shouted, rushing forward. Cale followed closely, feeling the surge of courage. Together, they leaped into the fray. Alex swung his arm, knocking the soldier off balance. Cale took the opportunity, using its agility to strike. It kicked the soldier hard, sending him crashing to the ground. The rebels around them gasped in surprise. "It's Cale," one of them shouted. "The prince is back." With renewed hope, the rebels rallied, fighting with even more strength. Alex and Cale worked together seamlessly, moving like a well-trained team. They dodged blows and struck back, pushing against Theros soldiers. As they fought, Alex noticed Derek in the thick of the battle, struggling against two soldiers. He hesitated, but then he remembered their earlier conflict. Cale was right. This was about survival, not grudges. "Let's help him," Alex yelled to Cale. Cale nodded, and they charged toward Derek, just as he was about to be overpowered. Alex tackled one soldier to the ground. Cale swiftly took out the other, and Derek stared at them in disbelief. "Why are you helping me?" Derek asked, breathless. "Because we need to fight together," Cale replied, its voice strong. "Theros is the real enemy." Derek's expression shifted from suspicion to understanding. "You're right. Let's end this. With the three of them fighting side by side, the tide began to turn. The rebels felt the energy shift as Kale led the charge. "For our kingdom," it shouted, rallying the others. "We can win this fight." The rebels fought with renewed vigor, pushing back against the soldiers. The battle raged on, and the air was thick with dust and the sounds of clashing metal. Just then, a loud roar echoed from behind. Theros himself appeared, his armor shining in the sunlight, eyes filled with fury. "You think you can defy me? I will crush you all." Kale stepped forward, its stance firm. "You will not take our home any longer, Theros." With that declaration, the final fight began. Kale charged at Theros, and Alex and Derek followed close behind. The outcome of their battle would decide the fate of their people. They fought with everything they had, ready to reclaim their kingdom and prove that hope and courage could triumph over tyranny. A new beginning. The sun began to rise over the horizon, casting warm light on the battlefield. The fight had been fierce, but at last, Theros lay defeated on the ground. Kale, Alex, and Derek stood over him, breathing heavily, but filled with a sense of triumph. The remaining soldiers, seeing their leader fall, fled into the forest, leaving the rebels cheering around them. Kale turned to the rebels, its heart swelling with pride. "We did it. We took back our kingdom." Cheers erupted from the crowd. "Long live Kale," they shouted. "Long live the prince." Alex smiled, feeling a wave of relief wash over him. The battle was over, but the journey was just beginning. He glanced at Kale, who was glowing with happiness. "You did it, Kale. You led them to victory." Kale looked at Alex, gratitude shining in its eyes. "I couldn't have done it without you. You believed in me when no one else did." Derek approached, a smile on his face. "I am sorry for doubting you, Kale. You proved yourself today. We all fought together, and we won." Kale nodded, accepting Derek's apology. "We are stronger together. Let's rebuild what was lost." As the cheers began to quiet, Kale stepped forward, raising its hands to gather the attention of the crowd. "Thank you all for fighting bravely. Today, we showed that we will not live in fear any longer. Together, we can create a new beginning for our people." The crowd erupted in applause, their spirits high. Alex felt a sense of hope. He knew that the path ahead would be difficult, but they had a chance to build a brighter future. As the sun rose higher, the rebels began to gather around Kale, discussing plans for the future. They needed to restore order and rebuild their homes. Alex listened intently, his heart swelling with pride for his friend. After some time, Kale turned to Alex. "We must return to my father's palace. The people will want to know their prince has returned. They deserve to hear our story and know they are safe." "Let's do it," Alex agreed. "We'll show them that hope is stronger than fear." The group made their way to the palace, where a crowd had already gathered. The news of Theros' defeat had spread quickly, and the people waited eagerly for Kale's return. As they approached the palace gates, the cheers grew louder. Kale stepped forward, raising its arms once again. "People of Erelon, I have returned, and I will lead us into a new era of peace and unity." The crowd erupted in joy, many crying tears of happiness. The burden of fear that had hung over them for so long was finally lifting. As Kale spoke about rebuilding their kingdom and uniting all the different tribes, Alex felt a warmth in his heart. He had not only fought for Kale's home, he had found a purpose of his own. After the crowd settled down, Kale turned to Alex. "You have become part of my family, Alex. You showed great bravery and loyalty. Together, we will lead our people." Alex smiled, his heart filled with gratitude. "I will always stand by your side, Kale. We will make sure that no one ever feels alone again." Days turned into weeks as the people of Erelon worked hard to rebuild their homes and lives. Kale and Alex worked together, ensuring that everyone had a voice in the new government. Derek became a trusted advisor, and the bond between them all grew stronger. The kingdom flourished, and the darkness that once surrounded it slowly faded away. The people began to thrive, united in their shared hope for the future. As Cale stood on the palace balcony, looking out over its kingdom, Alex stood beside it. "This is just the beginning," Cale said, a smile on its face. "Yes," Alex replied, filled with optimism. "A new beginning for everyone." Together, they faced the horizon, ready to embrace whatever came next. The future was bright, and they knew that with courage and friendship, they could overcome anything.